Hi, this is Sekhar Srinivasan and welcome to my channel. In the last video of our Flutter video series, we have discussed about what is the folder structure of a Flutter application. And in this video, let us understand what are Flutter widgets, what are stateless widgets, what are stateful widgets with a whole lot of demos. Friends, before I start with the video, a small request. If you really like my videos and if you feel that my channel deserves more subscribers, please subscribe my channel and click on the bell icon to get the notifications of the latest updates of my videos. And also please make sure that you share my videos. Who knows, this concept might help out someone who might require this particular concept. And also this encourages me to invest more time and also to prepare more quality videos in our channel. Now let us get started. To start with the Flutter application, the first thing we need to understand is a widget. So what are Flutter widgets means? In short, we can specify widgets are the basic building blocks of the Flutter application. Flutter widgets are built based on our modern reactive framework. And one more important point we need to remember here is that in Flutter, everything is a widget, where a widget can be considered as an immutable description of part of an user interface. A Flutter widget can be a UI element like text, button, image, or it can be a layout such as stack, column, list view, or it can be a stylistic element such as a color or font or animations. A Flutter widget can also be an aspect of a layout such as center, padding, etc. Now, let us understand the steps what we need to follow in order to create a simple Flutter application. The first step we need to perform is to import the library. The second step will be we need to define a main function, and remember that main function is the entry point of execution within the Flutter application. The third step is to create the widget as per the requirement, and finally the last step will be we need to run the app using the run app method, and we need to pass the widget which has to be displayed as the startup screen. Now let us understand with a simple demo. Let me flip to our Visual Studio Code. Let me first remove the test folder, because we are not going to do anything related to the testing in the next couple of videos. When I discuss about how to perform testing a Flutter application in the later part of the series, I will add that folder again. And also let me close the README file. If you recollect, in the previous video, I have explained about the folder structure, right? So what would be the folder where I have to write the code means? I guess everyone might have guessed it correct if you have seen my previous video. That is the folder lib. And let me expand that folder. We can observe the main.dart file. In the second video, while discussing about the configuring Flutter with Android Studio and Visual Studio Code, we have executed this program, right? But now we don't require this code anymore. We shall understand everything from the beginning, and by the end of this video, we shall recreate this code what we have removed in much more organized manner. Now, let us get started. The first thing we need to do is to import the Flutter library for supporting the material design. So let me type in import package:/flutter/material.dart. And I already informed that the entry point for the Flutter application will be main. So let me type in void main. And if we need to display anything on the screen, then we need to invoke a method called as run app, where this method will accept a widget for displaying on the screen. So let us first make it very simple. So let me type in run app of, let me use the most simplest of all the Flutter widgets, that is text for displaying some information. So let me type in text of welcome to Flutter world. whenever we don't have a material parent provided, and if we are using text widget, make sure that you use the text direction property, else we will get an exception. Okay, now let me type in text direction colon text direction dot ltr, which means left to right. Now let us execute the app. So let me first click on the run icon, and then let me click on the run and debug button. Let us select the simulator to be used for displaying the result. For that, let me select Start iOS Simulator. We can observe the iOS simulator has been started and getting launched. Let me resize the Visual Studio Code so that we can see both the code and the result for the first time. It will take some time to get the results as some Xcode build has to take place, but later it will be very fast, and you will also observe in this video. And now we can observe the application is getting loaded, and also we can observe the text "Welcome to Flutter World" on the top left corner. Now let me update this code so that we can get the content in the center. For that, we can use center widget. Let me first cut our text widget and type in center. And this widget will have a property called as child. So let me type in child colon, and let me paste the text widget code. Now let me refresh. We can observe "Welcome to Flutter World" has been displayed on the center. But if we wanted to design a proper UI, then we need to understand some key points. So let us understand some of the key points we need to remember while developing the Flutter application. The first block we can observe on the mobile screen is considered as the app bar, where the app bar should be set with the widget app bar, and this app bar widget can be further divided into 3 blocks. The first one is the leading, then the title, and the third one will be the actions. Below the app bar widget, we can also set the bottom, which is used whenever we require to design a tab page application within the Flutter. While discussing about how to create the tabbed pages in Flutter application later in this course, I will discuss more in detail about the bottom. After the app bar, the next block we can observe is the body. This is the place where we need to use the widgets to be displayed on the screen. And then whenever we observe most of the application, we can see some circle at the bottom corner with some icon, right? And that is called as floating action button. And below the body section, sometime we can observe some icons and titles, right? That is called as bottom navigation bar. And finally, if you observe in most of the application on the top, we see some kind of hamburger menu type, right? And whenever we click on that, we observe some screen will toggle, and that is called as a drawer. Remember that app bar is a widget, floating action button is a widget, bottom navigation bar is also a widget. And now we need to group all these widgets to build a single widget, right? For that, we need to use Scaffold widget. And we need to remember one important point, that is Scaffold is a part of a material design, and hence it should be used as an element of material design. For example, material app. Now let us redesign the previous application using the Scaffold widget. Once again, let me flip to Visual Studio Code and let me remove the center widget. And in order to develop a material design, we need to use material app. So let me type in material app, and this will have a property called as home. So let me type in home colon. We have understood from the presentation, Scaffold is the widget that we need to use for grouping all the other widgets to make our UI looks like a material design, right? So let me type in Scaffold, and we know that Scaffold has an app bar property. So let me type in app bar colon Now we need to use the app bar widget, and we know that app bar widget has 3 blocks. So let me type in app bar of leading colon icon of icons.public. Remember that icon is a widget that is used to display an icon on the screen, and the collection of default icons supported by Flutter we can get using icons collection. Now let me also display some title for our application. So let me type in title colon text of my Flutter app. Once the app bar is created, now let us try to display some information on the body of the screen. So let me type in body colon container of, where the container widget combines common painting, positioning, styling and sizing widgets. So let us decorate our UI. For that, let me type in decoration colon. Let me use a box decoration widget to decorate the screen, and let me use a gradient property so that we can provide the gradient colors. And in order to provide a linear gradient, we need to use linear gradient widget of colors colon. Let us define an array of colors. So let me type in colors.green, colors.light blue. And let us add a child for this container. Let me paste our center widget as the child. Let me save and execute. We can observe a nice icon on the app bar, the title, and an awesome gradient background with the center text welcome to Flutter World. By this time, you might have understood in Flutter everything is a widget, and we will be nesting the widgets like a tree and its branches, right? But writing all these widgets in one single place like this will always increase the complexity in maintaining if we develop a complex UI screen, right? So let us understand how to organize the code. For that, we need to understand one important point. That is, whatever the widgets we have, we can categorize these widgets into two. One is stateless widgets and the second one is stateful widget. First, let us understand what are stateless widgets before we continue with our code. Remember that a stateless widget is a widget that doesn't require mutable state. That is, the user interface that we are describing should not depend on anything other than the configuration information in the object itself. A stateless widget describes part of the user interface by building a constellation of other widgets that describes the user interface more concurrently. And the syntax to define a stateless widget will be class, class name, extends stateless widget, and we need to override the build method. So the syntax will be at override, and the build method should return a widget. So the syntax will be a widget build of, and this method accepts the build context type as its argument, and the build method can return any widget as per the requirement. So we need to type in return and the Flutter widget. One important point we need to remember here is that the build method of a stateless widget is typically only called in three situations. First time when the widget is inserted into the tree, second time whenever the widget parent changes its configuration, third time whenever an inherited widget depends on changes. Now let us try to organize our code using the stateless widget. Let me flip back to the Visual Studio Code, and first let me create a folder with the name called as screens. All our screen for the Flutter app we shall maintain in this folder. Okay. Now let me right click on the screens folder and let me create a new file and provide the name as welcome.dart. The first thing we need to do is to import our material library. So let me type in import package :flutter/material.dart. Now let us create a stateless widget. For that, we can use a simple snippet called as STL and press the tab. we can observe the boilerplate code of stateless widget is added. Now let me provide the class name as welcome. Now let me open the main.dot file and let me cut the entire material app block, and let me once again open the welcome.dart file and let us replace the container block with the material app block. We can observe an error at the main.dart file because the run app method requires a widget to be used for displaying on the screen, which we have removed right now. Let us say that we would like to use our welcome stateless widget as the content to be displayed. So let me once again open the main.dart file and let me type in welcome. Let me save the code, and just to show the difference, let me open the welcome.dart file and let me update the text to welcome to Flutter World by STL. Now let us try to refresh the app. We can observe the changes got reflected, and if you have noticed, now main.dart file is much more cleaner, right? Now whenever if you observe there is only a single line for execution, then instead of writing the entire block of code, we can use the fat arrow method for writing the code. In languages like C#, we call it as an expression bodied function. So let me comment the above main block and let me type in void main fat arrow run app of welcome. Let us execute the app again. We can observe the app is loaded successfully. In this widget, we don't need any changes dynamically at the runtime. What if there is a requirement for making some changes dynamically at runtime? Then we should not use stateless widgets. Instead, we need to use stateful widgets. So let us understand what are stateful widgets before we continue with the coding. Stateful widgets are the widgets that has a mutable state. Like stateless widgets, we can also consider a stateful widget as a part of the user interface by building a constellation of other widgets. Stateful widgets are useful whenever the part of the user interface we are describing has to change dynamically. Syntax to define a stateful widget. Class name extends stateful widget, and we need to override the create state method. So the syntax will be at override class name state create state fat arrow class name state. Next we need to define the class name state. For that the syntax will be class name state extend state of class name, and the class name state has to override the build method, which will be similar to that of the build method present at the stateless widgets. Now let us try to understand the syntax more in details. We need to remember that the stateful widget instances themselves are immutable, and they store their mutable state in separate state objects that are created by the create state method. Or in other ways, we can say that they will store their mutable state objects within the objects which the state subscribes. We need to always remember that the framework calls create state method whenever it inflates a stateful widget, which means that multiple state objects might be associated with the same stateful widgets if that widget has been inserted into the tree in multiple places. And one more important point we need to remember here is that if the stateful widget has been removed from the tree, and once again later if the stateful widget is inserted within the tree, then the framework will call the create state method again, and a fresh state object will also be defined in order to simplify the life cycle of state objects. If you remember in the beginning, we have removed the code of a counter application, right? So let us understand how to create that application using the stateful widget. So let me flip to the Visual Studio Code and let me create a new file and let me provide the name as counter_app.dart. Let me collapse the Explorer to give more room space for the coding. And let me write our first line of code to import the material library. So let me type in import package colon flutter slash material dot dart. Now, many of you might be thinking that at least stateless widget syntax was smaller when compared to the stateful widget. Do we have a snippet for stateful widget also like stateless widgets? Right? Fortunately, yes. We do have a snippet. Just type in STF and press the tab. Boom. We can observe the syntax of stateful widget. Cool, right? Now let me specify the name of the class as counter app, and we can notice that wherever the changes needs to take place, automatically the code has getting updated. Now, since we need the counter value to be incremented every time the user clicks on a button, let us define a variable counter. So let me type in int underscore counter equal to 0, and let me replace the container block to material app block. And let me open the main.dart file and let us update the widget to be used as counter app instead of welcome. We can observe some errors are displayed on the simulators. As of now, just ignore that because we don't have anything on the counter app to show on the screen, right? Now, let me comment the unused import statement also to avoid the warnings. Now, let me type in home colon scaffold of app bar of title colon text of counter app. Now we can observe that error has been resolved and we can see an app bar with the title counter app. Next, let me type in body colon and let us use the container, and let me provide the background color for the container. To do that, we can use the property color colon colors dot light green. And remember one important point: whenever you're going to use color, we should not use decorations, and whenever you're using decorations, we should not use color. Now let us set the child for the container. So let me use center of, and let us add a child colon property for the center as text, and let me type in you have clicked dollar underscore counter times, where dollar is used as string interpolation, which is used to substitute the value at the place. And also let me set the style for the text to make it large. So let me type in style colon text style of font size colon 24. We know that Scaffold also supports floating action button, right? So let us use that as the button. So let me type in floating action button colon floating action button of on pressed. Let us define a method block in order to set the state for the counter variable. We need to use the set state method. So let me type in set state, and within the method block, let me increment the counter value. So let me type in underscore counter plus plus, and in order to display the content within the floating action button, let us set the child property. So let me type in child colon icon of icons dot plus underscore 1. We can observe the simulator has been updated immediately, and plus 1 is now displayed on the floating action button, right? Now let me click on the button. We can observe the text at the center is getting dynamically changed every time I'm clicking on the button. Before we conclude our session today, let us have a brief summary. Whenever we say a stateless widget, remember that they doesn't require a mutable state, and these widgets are overrides the build method, and we need to use them whenever the UI depends on information on the object itself. Whereas the stateful widgets as a mutable state, and we need to override the create state method, and we need to return a state, and we need to use the stateful widgets whenever the UI changes dynamically. Hope you have got a fair idea on what are widgets, what are stateless widgets, and what are stateful widgets, and how to organize the code in a Flutter application. In the next video, we shall understand how to create a login form and use a text field to prepare the form in a proper way and also collect the values with the support of a controller and display those values. And before I conclude this video, once again friends, a small request. If you really like my videos and if you really feel that my channel deserves more subscribers, please make sure that you subscribe my channel and also share my videos. Happy programming with love, your Sekhar.